Hi everyone, welcome to this month's LinkedIn Lovin Live, where we're shining a light on the world's leading B2B social media platform, that is of course LinkedIn. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Jacqueline 𝐓𝐴𝐺𝐿, who's here to talk to us about how we can stand out on LinkedIn by using carousel posts. So Jacqueline's going to talk to us about what they are and how they work. So how do they actually stop the scroll and boost your visibility on LinkedIn? So it's one of those post formats that I've never really got to grips with. So I'm really interested in learning more about them and finding out what I've been missing out on by not using them. So I just want to say hello and welcome, Jacqueline. Thank you
for joining. Everybody. Hi. Hello.
This is your first LinkedIn Live as well, isn't it?
It is.
So it could be first of many.
That's exciting.
So just before we start, just to remind everybody what these LinkedIn Lovins are, if you've never been to one and you're wondering what the heck they are short, bite-sized LinkedIn learnings over lunch. And each month I'm joined by a guest expert to share their expertise on subjects to help support your LinkedIn activity and results. So I do like to make these LinkedIn Lovins as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, pop them in the comments box. And obviously, Jacqueline and I can look at those and come and answer those on the live. But we have a quick icebreaker for you. Could you start by telling us, are you using carousels currently in your content? And if you're not using them, what's stopping you? So I know what's stopping me, but it'll be interesting to find out what's stopping you. So let's get started. So Jacqueline, tell us a little bit about how you got started and why you're so passionate about carousels. That'd be fab.
Okay. So my background is marketing, and I've been in marketing for 25, 30 or so years now. Agency, client side, design agencies, marketing agencies, lots of different things. So I've seen lots of different companies using different ways to try and stand out, basically, wherever that might be. And more latterly, I was looking at LinkedIn and seeing lots and lots of people writing text posts, only text posts. Yeah. And I just felt people were missing a trick because they had amazing things to say, but they were just getting lost. It's such a busy space within LinkedIn generally. And if you don't capture someone's attention really quickly, then people will be off. There's a stat out there that if you don't, people will only scan a post for 7 seconds. So if you don't capture them straight away, they'll be off. Yeah. And if it's not skimmable and all the rest of it. So I just felt that there was an opportunity there to be able to help others get their amazing messages out there. So that's really why I set up niching on carousel design to help people bring their message and put their message out there, basically.
That's amazing. And you know what, the response from people about the carousels, is a lot of people are going, no, don't know how to, which is, it was the graphics for me that's been a stopper. But this is really interesting in terms of what people are saying about them. And a couple of people, including Warwick here, have said, don't use them, don't know what they are.
Right. Okay.
And that would be a great place to start. What
is a carousel? So a carousel is a series of slides within a post. So if you were to, visualize a PowerPoint presentation, for example, obviously you have a number of different pages and information on each page. So a carousel is essentially within a post. When you make a post, you can add a document, and it's a PDF document that you add individual slides, and then you swipe. So you've probably seen them within your feed, but maybe not aware that that's what they're called. It's called a carousel. Yeah. But as I say, it's a series of slides that you can put text or images or iconography or photography or whatever it might be. And it takes, it's like having a book, essentially. So you start on the first slide, you capture someone's attention, and then people swipe, through, and it takes you from front to the end of whatever it is you're trying to tell them.
Yeah. And the other thing I heard about carousels as well is that when you post something on LinkedIn, LinkedIn's obviously looking to see how interested your audience is in your post.
Absolutely.
And it's one of the things that people can do. They have to write enough to click on that see more button. So that is telling LinkedIn, if somebody clicks on that, that they're interested in seeing more of that post. And I heard that if people click on there's like a little arrow, isn't there, that takes them to the next page of the carousel, that if people click on that, that's also indicators to the LinkedIn algorithm that that person finds the post interesting.
Each click that you have on each of the slides counts as a new interaction. So whereas if you just had a text post, that would be one interaction. But if you've got information across, say, 10 slides, that's essentially 10 or 12 interactions or engagements. So that tells and the more engagements you get, obviously it tells the algorithm that people are interested. So that will in essence spread that further, because it's telling and also the other thing the algorithm really likes about carousels is what's referred to as dwell time. So if you've captured someone's attention on that first slide, and then people are taking through and taking in what's on each slide, that amount of time that people are spending looking at your post is referred to as dwell time or dwell factor. And the longer the dwell factor, again, the algorithm thinks, oh, people are liking this, we'll spread it further.
So, for me, again, as I say, it's a format I've not used, and, I'm going to say I should be using, but we know that it's going to be really good because it grabs attention, but it's also really good from an LinkedIn algorithmic perspective.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you very kindly did me a carousel to promote this LinkedIn Lovin', which actually I posted to my personal page. So I should put that example, which I will do after we finish. I'll put the example of that in the comments so people can see what you very kindly did for me to help promote this event. So I think there's lots of bonuses, isn't there, to having carousels and why we should be using them from that perspective. But what kind of information should we put on there? What should we use them for?
Well, I mean, there's lots of different ideas that you can use for a carousel, and some people, I think, possibly get into a little bit of a trap of, I've got some ideas, but I don't know whether this would work within a carousel. And some people, people talk about storytelling, and I use my own carousels to tell stories, so whatever it might be on a personal level, or it can be a little bit more factual. So, for example, you could use, how-to guides or, step-by-step instructions, lists, checklists kind of thing, case studies, success stories, where you might look at a challenge, a problem, the solution, the process, the results, for example, mythbusters, data and insights, selection of your recent work, inspirational quotes. There's so many things that I see people using carousels for, and essentially I think it's a way of being able to get sometimes relatively complex information across in a really sort of distilled way, and because it's sort of each individual page might capture a particular point or whatever, it just makes it easier to distill that information and people to engage with that information on that page, rather than having, say, a long text post where you'll lose people's attention, probably within the first paragraph or so. So, so that's it. So there's numerous ways that people use carousels, and it's just a case of trying and testing things, really.
And I guess therefore as well, with you saying you can use it in conjunction with the text box at the top. So you could say there's a bit in the text, but see the carousel for an explanation almost. If it's
exactly that. I mean, I personally, and for the clients I work with, I see some carousels where people literally put the same information as they do in the text post as they do in the carousel, and in some ways I think you're kind of missing a trick there, because I see carousel as almost like a distilling that information or using it as an executive summary. And so if you're going through the feed and you've got that first slide that has captured your attention, you just want people to get almost the top level information possibly And then if you've still got them engaged by the end of that carousel, they're much more likely to then go back to the text post and read the whole text post.
Yeah.
So it's just that first grab of attention that then will lure people in. And then, you know, as I say, you've got a lot more opportunity to get across whatever point you want to get across.
And I think that's a really good point, isn't it? Because you said to me before about that it's on the carousel itself, it's bite-sized information. So I think I've seen people create these carousel documents and they've got so much on them, like they've got lots of text and images, and basically it's just really cramped and full.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm a real advocate of less is more. So yeah, very much you know, keep things really short, and you know, in a minute maybe I'll go through some sort of best practice tips of how to do that. But the other thing is that in terms of, you know, there's a lot of psychology behind it as well, because you know, visual content is consumed so much faster than just text. You know, there's research out there, 60,000 times quicker people will consume a visual rather than reading text. And also the retention and learning from a visual, you know, a picture, an image, is so much greater than just text, something like 400% greater retention. So, you know, there is a lot of psychology behind it, as well as the practicalities of what works within LinkedIn, you know, specifically. So yeah, and there's lots behind it as to why they work, and ultimately it's ultimately about, you know, standing out in the feed, getting that sort of eye-catching sort of element to it, and being remembered as well. And if you've got a consistent look and feel, and people will start to come to recognize you in the feed, and that's where, you know, if you've got that recognition and that credibility, ultimately that will lead to trust, and then whatever your goals are within LinkedIn, you know, that will help reinforce that trust.
And I think that's a really good point, isn't it? It's all about that branding and being consistent and people seeing us. And, you know, for me, it's a post format, isn't it? Have carousel. So I'm going to put this up here, but the question I was going to ask that's just popped into my head is, not every post would be a carousel. Would you agree? Would you do every post as a carousel, or would you like every 5th post as a carousel or something?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone is slightly different, but I would absolutely not say every post to be a carousel, because that would just become boring ultimately. I mean, I think it's about having a mix. Because some messages, some posts you want to put out there lend themselves more to a carousel. You know, you can't put everything in a carousel. It might not, as I say, might not be that type of information. But I think if you have a mixture of different formats, audiences like that. They like to have, there has to be some kind of recognition of who that person is, but I think it keeps people on their toes a little bit more as well, and people come back for more. Whereas if people are only putting out text posts all the time, maybe it just becomes a little bit bland, dare I say it. You know, so if you can mixture of carousels, text posts, text and image, and video, you know, so mix it up. Yeah.
Mix it up, exactly. I love that. Just mix it up, and this is, you know, when it comes to creating content on LinkedIn, people going, oh, I need to have all this content. Well, actually, you could do one piece of content and create lots of different posts with it, because
absolutely,
a carousel or a video.
Yeah, that's what I do. So you know, I might create a text an image post, then I will recreate that into a carousel, and then also I reformat that carousel into a text-based video as well. So, you know, you can stretch your content that much further. So it just goes to show you don't have to be starting from scratch all the time.
Which is always great, isn't it? Who wants a blank piece of paper and so on? So I'm really sorry. I put this question up going, what stops you using carousel posts? And obviously we asked that question at the beginning, and just a couple of people have said, you know, like Teresa, don't know how to. I think, you know, so what I'd like to do now is talk about, you know, the challenges and what stops people using them. But so I think it's, you know, understanding why or what stops people using carousel posts?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, you know, having spoken to clients, and that it's generally falls into three camps. There's either people who just don't have the time to do it, you know, they're running their own businesses, etc. They don't have the creativity, you know, even to sort of visualize what they want. They just don't, they can't bring it to life. And then it's the practicalities of doing it, you know. How do I go about doing it? So yeah, so it's really sort of, as I say, creativity and lack of time, and headspace ultimately. So that's where I see people coming and you know, saying, I want to do it, but I can't, you know.
And I think all of those have stopped me doing it, because I don't see myself as being a very visual person, and so I've got some new branding, so hopefully I'll be able to do it a lot better. But it's like, you know, I don't want it to be, I kind of, it seems harder work sometimes for me to do it, but
yeah, I understand that, and I think, you know, any advice I would have for people out there who wouldn't know where to start, you know, I don't know whether you're aware, so there are graphic design programs out there like Canva, for example, and they have preset templates that you could go to Canva and you could start creating your own carousels. The only thing with that, I'd say, is not just to take anything off the shelf. I would use them in such a way to reflect your personality, you know, your brand goals, etc., etc. You know, I've seen people, you know, I've met people who've done that, and they, you know, they might be quite bubbly personalities, whatever, and then their carousels are really quite sort of corporate looking, and it just doesn't reflect who you are. So, but the beauty of Canva is that you can go in and you can change anything. You can change the colours, the typeface, the, you know, whatever. So if you want to, you know, as a first step and people want to try it out, I would definitely recommend Canva. And then just have a play around with it.
Yeah, so that's canva.com. So maybe we'll pop that in the comments in case people don't know that. But it is a great graphics tool that's free as well, isn't it?
Yes,
so
yes, absolutely.
Tracy's asked a fantastic question about actually how do you do it, because I think that's a confusing thing. There isn't that, you know, how do you upload a carousel option when creating a new LinkedIn post? So
yeah, okay. So the way that I would do it, again, so I do all mine in Canva. And as I say, you can use templates and set sizes, and I'll talk about some best practices in a minute. But once you've created a PDF document, when you go to LinkedIn and you know where it says at the top, you know, write a post.
Right. Yeah.
There are various icons along the bottom, and I think you press, there's a plus button, and it's basically add a document. And when you add that document, so you find the file, you add it, and it will then upload it into LinkedIn for you, and it will show each individual slide. So it's actually, once you know how, it's actually very easy to do.
Yeah, it's like anything, isn't it, on LinkedIn, once you know how. The other thing, you can give it a title as well, can't you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think you need a good title for it as well, because people
absolutely.
can also download it. So you have to remember people can download it. So you don't want it. You can't, and it has to be a PDF, isn't it? It can't be any other format. It's a PDF. Yeah,
it's only a PDF. Absolutely that. Yes, and in fact, so that title that you give the name of the document is really quite important, because it's, you know, there's essentially three hooks. I don't know if people know what I mean by hooks, but sort of that, what the thing that will grab someone's attention to start with. And there are three hooks with a carousel. So you've got the hook of what that first page looks like, in terms of, you know, the words or the graphic or whatever it might be. You've got the hook of what that title is of that PDF, and if you start playing around with it, you'll see. So there's a black line or black bar at the top of once you've loaded it up, and that will give you the name of what the document is and the number of pages in that carousel. And so you could use that as another layer of a hook. So rather than just repeating what's on the slide, you know, it could be another layer of sort of enticing people in. And then the third layer of the hook is obviously the 2 lines that you get within the text post before you get to the, you know, read more or whatever it is. So the 3 levels of trying to entice people to read, you know, to basically start reading. Yeah, and obviously if you've only got a text post, you've only got that one hook.
One thing, yeah. And I love the idea of using the title of that Word document to actually, as a call to action, click through to find out more or something, rather than, I've never thought of that. I've always used it as a title of what's in the carousel document itself, and that's like, oh, so wrong. And I think that it's a really really interesting point to actually start maybe talking about some tips, you know, what's best practice. Sarah here has asked about, is there a minimum, maximum number of slides? Is there an optimum number, I guess, so that we should be using?
I mean, best practice would say that you would use 10, 12 slides maximum.
It's quite a lot then.
But yeah, exactly that. But that's, again, less is more. So I would rather have more slides with fewer words on each page than trying to cram it in, if that makes sense. But sometimes you see I see, you know, top creators doing 20 plus slides or whatever it might be. I wouldn't get too hung up on the number of slides as long as it's not ridiculous. But it's just a case of, as I say, not having too much on each slide so that you can get your point across, and having some kind of rhythm and you know, kind of almost teasing people through as well, if you like. So so I would break it down into two areas, if you like. So firstly, 10 to 12 pages maximum. Size wise, aspect ratio, so a 4 to 5 aspect ratio. So what that means is the number of pixels that each you know, X and Y axis, so to speak. So that is 1080 by 1350 pixels. This might not mean
in the comments later.
but in when you go to Canva, for example, it will ask you what you want to create, and then it will set it up for you. So don't worry too much about the sizes. But ultimately, if you go, you can do square ones, and lots of people do square ones. But if you do a slightly different aspect ratio, you occupy a bit more space in the feed, and it's a really subliminal thing. But you just basically you give yourself more space, and it takes up more of the page. So if you've got the opportunity to do it, just do it.
Yeah.
So that's that. Then in terms of visuals, obviously, you want to have something, as I said earlier, you want to have something that reflects your personality, and have some kind of consistency as well, because you know you want people to come to recognize you. So that would be in terms of the colors, fonts, you know, the graphical elements that you want to use. So you'll create some kind of style. One thing that you need to be aware of is obviously the contrast between the text and the background image.
Yes.
I see lots of people who do things it's really, really hard to read. So really, really just be aware of having that contrast between the colours. Ultimately, it's to ensure legibility. And also I'd say not to, again, in terms of less is more, but not to have too much what I'd call design clutter, you know, cramming too much stuff on the page. So you want to have lots of breathing space around the words so that people can just flick through and not have to like, oh God, there's too much going on. So that's kind of it from the visual side. And then on the word side of things, as we've said, you know, you want to have minimal words, bite-sized chunks, you know, executive summary, so to speak. Keep to one topic or one idea per page rather than, again, cramming too much on.
Yes, it's just a question Barbara had, you know, better to have photos with one line. So it's 1 point, isn't it, per slide? Yeah,
ideally, because again, you just want, in the same way with a text post, it's got to be skimmable. So if you're cramming too much in, people are like, oh God, I can't, you know, it's too much. So yeah, just try and keep it as simple as possible. Then within it, we've talked about sort of the hooks. Then when you're within it, you know, there's things called a sort of open loop. So it's trying to tease people through. So you might have a section of copy and then say things like, oh, that's not all ... or here's where it gets interesting ... Basically lead them to the next page. Yeah, exactly.
And they have to click
arrows or graphical cues to keep them going. And then to end with a strong call to action. So basically that means the last slide should encourage action. So whether that's sort of connect with me, DM me, follow me for more, that kind of thing. So it's really so that you're, rather than just throwing stuff out there and not getting some benefit from it, always, you know, recommend ending with a strong CTAs, it's called, and ultimately it's about checking legibility, because you know, if people can't read it, then that's off. So what you would do is upload it. What I do is upload it to LinkedIn and test it before you post it, so you can click through it just to check that it works. And also legibility on mobile as well, not to forget that, because obviously it's going to be that much more of a screen, and the majority of people, well, lots of people do look at LinkedIn on mobile, rather than
on the mobile. Yes, 70% of traffic is to LinkedIn is from the mobile. So yes, that's a really good point. You know, anything too much is just going to be like, too difficult to read, isn't it?
That's right.
Alan's asked a great question. Should I keep my branding consistent for each carousel? So
yes, absolutely. Keep the branding consistent, but that doesn't necessarily mean, I would say, sort of get too cornered, if you see what I mean. So with my own branding, I sort of change it up slightly, but there's always some element of recognition in what I'm doing. So some of those graphical elements for me are always on whatever I do, they're always on there. But I wouldn't say use exactly the same template for each carousel. Change it up slightly.
So you could have a series, maybe 2 or 3 templates, but they're still with your brand colors on them, but they look slightly different.
Yes, exactly that. So that they're not, because it will just become a little bit too boring, not only for yourself doing them, but also for your readers. Just to change it up slightly, you know, it might be depending on how, you know, if you've got a sort of a color palette that's got several colors in it, for example, you might want to change it slightly each time, and just on a bit of a rotation.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's a really good point, isn't it? So I've just done my new branding, and I've got, like, I don't know, half a dozen colors in my color palette, so I could do different templates with different colors.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as there's, as I say, there's something that's recognizable each time. So whether it's your logo or whatever it might be, just so that people
have got to know it's you.
Like, they know. Oh, I know that's Judy, for example.
Yes. Yeah. So Paul has just asked a question to confirm. So we would create it in Canva or PowerPoint. You can do it in PowerPoint. You save it as a PDF, and then you upload it to LinkedIn as a document post.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So sorry, was that quick? Yeah, that's right, exactly it. So you create it as a PDF, and as I said earlier, so you go to write a post or whatever. I can't remember what it says.
Yes, it is right at the top of your feed. Write a post.
And then at the bottom of that section, there are a number of icons. And I think one is, you know, you can see you can open a document or so. Oh no, sorry. A visual or photo, that kind of thing. That's where you would add a photo to a normal text post, for example. But for carousels, what you need to do is there's a little cross icon. You click on there and more icons will come up, and scroll across there, and then one of those will be, it says document, and then if you click on document, it will become self-explanatory, but basically you upload that PDF, and it will come up with a little window, and then you can even scroll through the carousel just to check it's all looking fine. And then I think you click add or something, and then you can write the text post that accompanies it, and then you publish it.
Yeah, and I think that's key as well. So I think the thing is you don't have to use Canva. You could use a PowerPoint that do the same thing, but it's about saving it as a PDF so it becomes a document.
Yeah.
And also making sure that when you post it on LinkedIn, you do put some text around it. And Sarah's very kindly just confirmed the size of the slides to use in Canva or also in PowerPoint.
Yeah, exactly that. So that's the recommended dimensions. You could do it 1080 by 1080, which is the square format, obviously. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just that if you go slightly bigger, as I said earlier, you'll own a little bit more space within the feed.
So that is really worth knowing, because sometimes it can be a bit confusing when you look. So what's the best image size? What's the best size for this? And sometimes I have seen two, and it's a bit confusing to know which is best. So it's really good to know that actually that slightly bigger size is what we want, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Indeed. So I had a question and it's just gone from my head. I was going to ask a question. Isn't that annoying? Annoying.
I can throw in some more stats if you like. Only because...
Well, we are on the half an hour, but there was going to be a really important question. It was that important, it's just gone from my head. But I think somebody, they were asking about using, and I don't know whether this actually makes a difference or not, about using a scheduling tool. So I was thinking that, I always schedule generally. If I'm going to schedule, I use LinkedIn anyway. But it doesn't make any difference if whether you're doing a document post.
Yeah, you can schedule a carousel in exactly the same way. So if you were to do it as schedule a text post in LinkedIn, as I said earlier, you add a document, the PDF, and then you can schedule it in exactly the same way. So it's no problem.
Come back to me just very quickly. Sorry to keep you, everybody, and also you, Jacqueline. Just come back to me. That call to action. So you said end on a strong call to action. So obviously the link, if you had a link, you're not likely to put a link in the document post, are you? Because that's not going to be clickable.
No,
if you wanted to send somebody, you'd have to put that in the post that goes with the document.
Absolutely. Put it in the post, but put it in the comments, not in the actual post, because LinkedIn doesn't like it if it sends people off elsewhere. I don't really understand that, because essentially you're doing the same thing if you put that post in the comments. But anyway, seemingly, if you can't put it within the carousel because it's not a clickable file.
Yes, it's not within the document. So I actually would caveat that, Jacqueline, and say that you can put a link in to the post, the main body of the post, because the carousel will stop it from being a hyperlink. So normally when you put an external link into a post, it creates this horrible hyperlink. But that's a great point about putting it in the comments. You should put it in the comments as well.
Yeah.
Wow, that is fantastic. I've learned, just the biggest light bulb for me, but there's been lots, is just how to use that title thing. You put a title over the top. We'll put an example in the comments when we finish this. If you've got any more questions for Jacqueline, either please go and connect with Jacqueline directly on LinkedIn. We've put the link to Jacqueline's LinkedIn on there. Put any questions that you may have in the comment box.
Do reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that people have got, or it's like, oh, what do I do here? So yeah, more than happy.
And obviously, if anyone needs help with actually getting those created, because as you said, it takes time and we're all busy, and so getting somebody like yourself to actually put them together for us is even better, isn't it? So here you go, Jacqueline. A bit on you, but that's fantastic. Thank you so much indeed again for joining us today. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.